All right, we're here. We're gonna start our final pour, and I'm gonna start off and show you the product we're using. It's made by Incredible Solutions. Their tabletop epoxy. It's important to point out what all we've done to get to this point. There's been about 100 or so hours into this tabletop project, as well as the bench that's over here, already completed, double poured and curing. You can't see it very well, and there's no light over in this corner, but I got it covered, and it's gonna sit for another few days. They recommend 7 days even for full cure. Important to also note the environment that we're in. I'm in an environment controlled garage, 77 degrees, which is the product manufacturer's spec. So it's a little warm working, but zero humidity, ideal for what we're trying to do today. So just to point out what we've got into this project as of right now, again, about 100 hours. This is African sapele. The whole piece came rough sawn, 1.5 inches. This was all done by hand, no machines, no planers, no sled, nothing. It was a relatively flat slab to begin with, and we chose it because of that, from Bell Forest Products here in Ishpeming, Michigan. It was a 10-foot slab, so the bench you saw is the end 3 feet cut off and butted up, so I got 2 live edges on either end of the bench, just like we have live edges on the sides of the table slab. So this thing was sanded down with a belt sander, starting with 40, 50, and 60 grit, then eventually working our way up to 100 grit sandpaper, and even up to 160 on the belt sander before going to a 220 grit palm sand top finish. I got my 2 assistants over here, Coleman and my wife Jen, and today is our final step in the process. So we're going to be doing what's called a flood coat over the top of this process. So after the sanding was complete, we did a single coat of a pre-stain kind of conditioner, and then we also, well before that, we actually wiped down the 220 with warm water to raise the grain, 220'd it again, then did pre-stain and 220'd it again. So that got it super ultra smooth. After that, we decided to go with a completely transparent oil-based stain, followed by 2 coats of oil-based polyurethane, doing 220 in between each. We then found out from the product manufacturers, who are really good about their instructions that they provide to you, and step by step. I mentioned it in my review I did on Amazon, but I strongly suggest thoroughly reading every last word of the pamphlet that comes with the floor epoxy, because it goes over some pretty good FAQs. The one being that saved this project, and again, I'm a first timer, so I'm not a great resource for what is great about this epoxy versus others. I've never done this before, so all I can tell you is how this worked for a first time person, and kind of what I found in working with it. It's been a magnificent process. We've had 0 issues, knock on wood, because this is the final step in that process. So what we found is that reading the instructions revealed that this product absolutely cannot be used directly over the top of oil-based products. Did a little bit of research, read the FAQs, and found that we were okay. We just needed to do a few coats of latex polyurethane once the oil-based product thoroughly cured and dried. So we waited for a few days. We let the oil-based top coat of polyurethane completely cure, and then we came in and we did 3 very liberal coats of latex-based polyurethane before getting to the point where we even opened a bottle of this product. Okay. Once that process was complete, we did, and this just happened yesterday, we did a first, what they call a seal coat or base coat of epoxy. We mixed up for this particular 1.7 gallons. They have a really good calculator on IncredibleIndustriesOnline.com that you just put in your rough measurements or exact measurements, length and width. They ask you a few questions about the method of which you're doing your pours, and boom, it shoots out your total epoxy needs, as well as how many fluid ounces they want for the first coat or the seal coat, and then obviously the remainder then being used today in the flood coat. So with that, we're ready to go. You can put questions in the comments if we eventually get this. But what we've got, because the manufacturer recommends mixing no more than a single gallon batch at a time, is we're going to mix 2 1-gallon batches, and then in the transition period after 5 minutes, we're actually going to combine them into one bucket and transfer to a clean bucket so that we can pour out of there. So Jen's gonna do that while the video runs, and I'm gonna start pouring, but let's make sure we wipe out this 5-gallon bucket with the isopropyl alcohol. That is another important step too. You wanna make sure everything is spick and span, perfectly clean. So even though these are new out of the hardware store, right off the shelf, we still like to wipe everything out. You never know what's gonna be in the bucket. So this is gonna be our clean bucket that we're gonna transfer everything into once we start mixing. So with that, there's a clock going. As soon as we mix part B into part A, we're gonna start that timer, and that's when game time starts, because we then have 5 minutes of mixing, and eventually we will have 3 more minutes after we transfer to the green bucket that we're finishing in. So we've got lines marked, and we're going to be pouring a ½ gallon of each product in. We learned this the first time doing the bench. Is part A, which I'm working with here, the base resin, is the viscosity of probably, I don't know, honey, maybe even not quite molasses, but it really is quite thick. And Jen's pouring part A, which is much less viscous. It's much more resembling a Caro syrup, or maybe something like, I don't know, motor oil, but clear. So what we made the mistake of trying to eliminate is the element of trying to measure this stuff, specifically part A, in the middle of a pour. Now these two can sit, I'm not sure the pot life of a single one not mixed with the other, but we're not really concerned right now with timing. You know, we got all day here. This isn't a problem in terms of the timing, but as soon as what I'm pouring touches what Jen's pouring and we start the mixing process, we gotta be moving, and we gotta be ready to go. So we've got our stir sticks, we've got our spreaders, we've got all kinds of stuff prepared. We've got our torch, our lighter, everything that we need to get this done relatively quickly. How are you doing? Now, I'm not going to mess with, I have a little bit left over from a previous pour, so instead of wrestling with, because technically that was 1 gallon, so I should have probably been able to empty this and have exactly a ½ gallon in each of these buckets marked up to the lines here. But instead of wrestling with squeezing that all out of that last bucket, I'm just pulling out